back up. So we're back with part three. Okay, Tom, so we finished that sheet. Is there anything, or where do you want to head to next?
I just want to briefly again recap the pooled cash just so you have an idea of what we have from a cash flow liquidity standpoint. I have actual numbers for February, and then I have, again, I want to emphasize it's an estimate for March. So, but again, I feel pretty comfortable with where that's at. But again, if we look at the pooled cash for February, we had $16.2 million in the general money market account and general account. So we had 2.6 million, or 2.5 million in the general account, and we had 13.7 million in the money market account. And the general fund share of that amount was $8.9 million. Again, the other larger fund is obviously the capital project account. So again, all the money that we got from Kish Bank for the loan that we did in 2018, there's still funds sitting in there, plus what was left from prior revenue that we had in there. So there's about $3.8 million and then 8.9 in the general fund. Again, there's a couple negative balances that the general fund kind of floats, and that's always kind of that way. If you look at March, again, the numbers are fairly similar. Again, we went from 16.2 down to about 14.8 million. The money market account has been reconciled, and that 11.8 million is accurate. I just don't know what the general account is. But that number that I have there is based on all of the other pool cash participants. I pulled their balance sheets, got all the numbers there. And so it looks like the general fund's around $9 million. But again, once the controller's office reconciles the general account, I'll know for certain with that. But I just wanted to kind of give you something so you could see the difference between February and March. Now, again, what I anticipate happening based on the collections that we have in April, you'll start to see this really go up. And then in May, it'll really start to go up quite a bit. So that pooled cash number will get into the 20s. So you'll see it go up dramatically. You'll see the general fund go up dramatically. And so I think in conjunction with obviously the real estate tax sheet that I'm updating every week, obviously getting this pooled cash report monthly and seeing where that's at is really important so that you guys have a confidence level of where the cash is at. Because again, this is two different buckets. We look at the unassigned general fund balance, which is a paper number on a sheet, and that's important. But the liquidity piece is what's really important to be able to process payroll, process payables, to be able to have the money to be able to function. And again, depending on, this is where we would see in the pooled cash. So right now, for instance, you can see offices like Children and Youth where they have a positive cash balance. If the state were to delay funding, this is where you would see them going into a negative cash balance, and we basically act like Big Brother, and we're the bank, and we basically float them until the money comes in. Now, when the money comes in, it goes back into offset the general account, but the general account will float them. So that's the scenarios where you could get into situations where you have large receivables in some of these agencies because they're waiting. It's not that they're not going to get the funding. It's just that the state's in a pinch too from a liquidity standpoint. So they could do scenarios again where we're just waiting and we're waiting. Now we're in a lot better position than most. So this is going to trickle down to many county levels. Again, if they don't have much cash on hand, that's where they're going to be stretched thin. But again, we have a lot of funds within the general fund and within the capital project fund. So now again, obviously as we do the courthouse renovations and we spend money there, that capital, if that were to continue, you would see the capital project fund balance dwindle down a little bit.
Okay, any questions on pooled cash for Tom? Okay, all right, hearing none, Tom, next document, next sheet.
So is there anything else from a revenue standpoint that you kind of want to talk about? Because I think we've kind of captured most of the major things. Again, the debt service revenue will be directly tied to the real estate tax revenue that's collected that comes through. So it's pretty much, you can see the percentages on those spreadsheets that I send you right now. The percentages for debt service pretty much mirror general fund, and that's what you would anticipate seeing throughout the rest of the year. The only scenario where we would get into is if we did not have enough debt service. If the real estate taxes really dropped off and we didn't have enough come through there, we could have a situation where we might have to move money over to debt service. I don't see that scenario happening. I'll look at that in more detail. This year, again, along with last year, there were more payments going out than money's coming in. But if you look at the, again, debt service bond payments, I don't have it in front of me right now, but we have 2 of them dropping off at the end of this year. And so when we get into next year's payments, when we start paying in 21, the only bonds that will be left will be the RZEBD bond for Centercrest. We will have the 2017 refinance, that the big one that happened right when I came on board, and then what we have left for Kish, and then that's it. And then an RZEBD bond, I believe, goes away in 21, if I remember correctly. And so we'll get to a point where the tax revenue coming in should be more than the payments coming in, and that should build up. But that's a scenario where we have to look at that debt service to make sure that there's enough funds in there. I feel that we'll be fine because, again, it's only a small portion of the millage that goes to debt service. The lion's share of our millage fund. It's just a small, I think it's 1.29 or whatever it is that goes to debt service. But I'll keep an eye on that and look at that. But outside of these other categories, is there anything else on the revenue side that you want to talk about?
Tom, I want to say you raise a very good point that if property tax revenues decline by a little bit, debt service is probably okay. But if we see a noticeable drop in the county property taxes, we still have to pay the bonds. And so that means we pull the money out of general fund.
We'd have to transfer money over. Yep. Now you will have, again, right now the controller's working with the external auditors working on the audit for 2019. As we get closer, we'll get to where we're going to end the year for 19. But again, my anticipation would be a couple $100,000 surplus. So you will have that in your back pocket to, if you want to line some things up. If we will have some time here before they post final numbers, that if we needed to move some funds over to a different fund, we could do that within that 19 year and be strategic that way. Again, if we think that, for instance, transportation, even if we do everything that we can on our end, is not going to be able to sustain certain things, you can move a little bit of money over there. Same thing with what we just talked about with debt service. You might just let it all flow through to the general fund. I don't know, but you have some options, which will be good.
Okay, I think we're all good giving you feedback on a revenue perspective from that regard, Tom. Thank you.
So from an expenditure standpoint, I didn't send anything out because I just primarily was trying to focus on the revenues at this point. We can do more detail with the expenditures. The one main thing, obviously, the majority of our expenditures are tied to salaries and benefits. As I look at the 20 budget, almost $26 million in salaries, almost $12 million in benefits out of an $82 million budget. So that's a lot of it. We have contracted services is another large line item, and then pass-throughs. But again, a lot of those contracted services, a lot of them are tied to grant funding via the state. So if they go up or down, there's revenue to offset that unless there's major changes. The one thing, obviously, within the benefits that we really are going to have to look at is the ADC and what that retirement contribution is going to be for 20. And then obviously, I kind of look at this in 2 phases. Right now, we're trying to react to everything that's happening right now for 20, but then it's also trying to, maybe even more so than we do in other years, trying to plan ahead for 21. And the impacts that are going to happen there based on, again, we had our conversations yesterday with the with two of the investment advisors and just trying to bring us up to date with where things are at. But you could see the impact to the funds and what we have as far as the market value of those funds compared to where they were at the end of 19 and where they're at now, and then that impact that it's going to have on the ADC. So we should be getting a number. Jason should be getting a number soon from Korn Ferry with a solid ADC number for the 2020. We had budgeted $2.5 million for our retirement. And so that will, once we get that number, if it comes in better than that, that will be very helpful as we try to plan ahead for the rest of 20 here. But we should be getting that number and then kind of go from there. But that's the bigger thing looking ahead to 21 is that impact of what that ADC could go to.
Okay, thanks, Tom. So we'll wait word on the ADC as we go through, but just for the record, we're at 2.5 in terms of what the budget has, or 2.6.
Yeah, I think it was 2.5 million was the budgeted number, I believe. Yes.
One of the things that we were going to try to work off of was the external allocations that we provide.
Yes.
Are you able to send that to us now, or do you have something that you could maybe put on your screen that we could look at for that, Tom? If not, we can always do that at a later meeting. But that was probably one of the ones that that's not really attached to any state funding, federal funding. That's sort of under our purview.
Right.
Or if you maybe even have the sheet from the budget, we could maybe look at that on your screen, or you could email it out, whatever's easier for you.
Yeah, just give me a second here.
Sure. And what we could actually do is, we're at 90 minutes into the meeting. If we wanted to take a 5-minute break, just for some coffee refills or anything, we could just do a quick recess and come back. So it's 12:30 now. I'll stop the recording now.